Heidi Broussard thought she had found a sister in Magen Fieramusca. They shared everything: laughter, memories, even the joy of being pregnant at the same time. But behind the smiles and the belly bumps was a sinister plan, brewing for months, as one woman's obsession turned deadly. What happens when your best friend becomes your worst nightmare? This is a story of how Megan's secret obsession spiraled into a horrifying crime, one that shocked not just the people closest to Heidi, but an entire nation. This is a story of how friendship became betrayal and how the desire to live someone else's life led to murder. Welcome to Pop Crime Confidential. I'm your host, Haley. This is where truth just isn't uncovered, it's revealed in all its twisted ways. I'll have a link below to this story's show notes so you can check out more information if you would like to. Grab a snack, get ready, because we're about to reveal secrets so twisted they pop. Three girls: Rachel, Kelly, and Heidi. They're inseparable. They're known as the Three Musketeers, but they call themselves Charlie's Angels. Rachel, she's known as the wild child. It seems like Rachel is more straightforward, the friend that's going to tell you like it is, even if you don't want to hear it. Kelly is softer, the more reserved or quiet one of the group. And then there's Heidi. Heidi's the spunky, loving friend, just so full of life and energy. She was compassionate, never judgmental, a social butterfly. She made friends with everyone. All three girls had their traditional Christian values instilled in them at a very young age. In Lake Charles, you're expected to go to service every Sunday and every Wednesday. You're also expected to do everything the right way. Abstain from sexual relations until marriage. Have children after saying, "I do." They feared God more than they feared their parents. And they all wore purity rings. They're also the popular girls of the church camp in Columbus, Texas. Yes, even church camps have their cliques. Everyone wanted to hang out with them. They were loud and always made sure they were having fun. You wanted to be in with these three, and you either fit in or you didn't. These three popular girls, they got to choose who is sitting at the popular kids' pew during service. Carissa was also loud and fun. She makes her way into the it group. They go on to say that Carissa likes to be the center of attention. I imagine Carissa is the friend at parties who has all the good stories to tell, with everyone just surrounding her and laughing. And then there's Megan. Well, if you ask Rachel or Kelly, they would say Megan definitely was not in their group. She's just a weird wannabe. I mean, don't get them wrong, she's nice and all, but she just wasn't magnetic. She's pushy, she crosses social boundaries, and, well, she just really doesn't fit in. However, Heidi can't help to be herself. She always saw the best in everyone and wanted to make sure everybody always felt included. Rachel goes on to say, even if they tried to leave Megan out, she would never even know because Heidi would always re-include her to make sure Megan's feelings were never hurt. Which is annoying to Rachel and Kelly, given the fact that Magen would constantly interject herself and try to pull Heidi away from the friend group in order to get Heidi all to herself. Magen comes off as jealous, and Heidi can't really have any other friends. As the group grows to become young women, church camp comes to an end, and they all go their separate ways. Rachel, Kelly, and Heidi, they stay in their hometown, Lake Charles. Magen moved to Houston, and Carissa stayed in Columbus. Even though they're all living their lives separately, Heidi always had a way of keeping in touch with her friends no matter what. She would regularly check in with her friends to see how they're doing and make sure that she's up to date on their lives. Heidi starts working at a new casino in Lake Charles, and this is where she winds up meeting Shane Carey. She falls head over heels for Shane pretty quickly. Sparks fly, they're dating, and not too long in their relationship, Heidi ends up pregnant. This baby was not something they planned. It really just came as a shock. Given that Lake Charles is a very conservative Christian town, Heidi was worried. Was everyone going to judge her? What would they think? She really didn't know how the people would react. But she was so excited to tell her mom that she's going to have a grandchild. Heidi gives birth to their baby boy, and she's overjoyed. She embraces motherhood wholeheartedly as if it had been her true calling in life. In 2014, Shane and Heidi decide to move to Austin, Texas. During this time, their relationship becomes complicated. It's described they had a very tumultuous and toxic relationship. They would be good for a while and then break up. Heidi had actually moved out a few times, but eventually they would find their way together again. This was all very hard on Heidi. Shane was a great guy on the outside. He had his moments that caused him to be a less than great dad or boyfriend that Heidi needed. Heidi's friends state, she gave people chances they did not deserve. It has not been confirmed what exactly went on in their relationship to make them struggle. However, in my own personal opinion, it's hard to be away from everything you've ever known, and adding a child into it just makes it that much more difficult. If Shane was working and Heidi stayed home with their son, it can make you feel very isolated. Given the fact that Heidi was the person who really nurtured all of her friendships, I could imagine having adult social interaction and getting out of the house was very important to her, and also is probably good for her mental health as well. Heidi ultimately decides she's moving back home to Louisiana. But her plan comes to a halt when all of a sudden she is pregnant with their second child. She's not excited about this pregnancy this time, since her relationship was unstable and she had no family support. This is not to say that she loved her second baby any less. But imagine, you broke up with your partner, you decide you're moving back home, and then boom, you're pregnant. You're gonna be like, well, shit, what do I do now? But somehow this blessing sparks a whole new chapter in the relationship. Shane suddenly does a 180. He steps up and becomes the man that Heidi desperately needed. Like he'd been this person all along, just hiding underneath the surface. Heidi, Carissa, and Megan's friendship grew closer since they lived in Texas. They all started spending more time together. The areas that they all lived in were really just an hour to 2.5 hours away from each other. To help give you a perspective, if you are driving from Austin to Houston, Columbus is right in the middle. When Heidi told Magen that she was pregnant, Magen has exciting news of her own. She was pregnant too. They even have the same due date. It's crazy, but it's also perfect. Two best friends would go through one of life's biggest experiences, pregnancy and motherhood together. How exciting! Their children will get to grow up being best friends too. You're probably wondering, who is Magen with? Does she have a boyfriend? Does she have a husband? Who is she having this baby with? Magen Fieramusca and Christopher Green's relationship isn't so rosy. They reside in Houston together, and their relationship is quite rocky. Chris and Magen had been together since 2016, but ultimately, they break up in March of 2019. They live in the same house, but on separate ends, so they weren't spending time in the same room together or sleeping in the same bedroom. Chris is also gone a lot too. He works in the oil field, so Magen is just home by herself most of the time. And this is when she really leans into Heidi for support and tells her, I can have you help me if I become a single mom. November 26th, 2019, Heidi gives birth to a beautiful baby girl. Heidi and Shane's parents come all the way from Louisiana and wait for the delivery of their new grandchild. Magen also comes to visit and drives about 2 hours from Houston at 37 weeks pregnant just to be at the hospital. Shane and Heidi are handing the baby to Shane's father. Then all of a sudden, his father hears this agitating, degrading noise. That noise would be Magen inserting herself and asking if she can hold the baby because she has to leave soon. Shane and Heidi actually end up giving Magen a key to their apartment and say that she can stay the night. Shane doesn't want her driving back late, being 37 weeks pregnant. And he also cared about Magen because Heidi cared a lot about Magen. At this point, Magen and Heidi had been friends for about a decade. Magen says that she'll leave their key on the counter. She goes home the next morning, and when Heidi and Shane get back to the apartment, they're unable to locate that key. December 6th, Magen announces she welcomed her baby girl into the world, named Luna, at a birthing center in the Woodlands, Texas. People are excited for Heidi and Magen. It's such an extraordinary thing to be able to have your babies grow up together. And just 3 weeks after Margot was born, on December 12th, Shane gets up, gets ready for work, says goodbye to his children and to Heidi. It's a normal day. Heidi drives her son to school, walks inside, takes him to class, says goodbye, and she leaves around 8:12 a.m. that morning. Heidi gets back home and she calls Shane at around 8:30 a.m. and they just have a normal conversation about dropping their son off at school. Shane gets off work around 1:50 p.m. and calls Heidi. She doesn't answer and it goes to voicemail, but it's no big deal. I'm sure she's just busy with the baby. Shane gets back to the apartment around 2:50 p.m. and he sees Heidi's car is parked in the parking lot. He goes to the front door, it's unlocked, but this isn't anything unusual. Heidi and Margot are not inside, but he's thinking maybe they're just visiting a neighbor in the complex, showing off the new baby, or at the park. There's a neighborhood park that's about a 5-minute walk from the apartment complex. The home isn't in any kind of disarray. It all looks normal, except for the fact that all the essential newborn items like diapers, wipes, bottles, car seats, and the specific formula for Margot's jaundice were still there. He honestly just doesn't think much of it and carries on with his usual after work routine. Surely Heidi's not too far. But as the day progresses, he realizes their 6-year-old needs to be picked up from after school activities. Shane just thinks, okay, well, I'll head to the school and Heidi will be there too. She would never miss picking up their son. He picks up Silas around 5:50 p.m. and waits a little while to see if she shows up. He waited around 10 or 15 minutes. Heidi never arrived. Shane and their son, they get back home and Shane starts calling Heidi's friends and family members asking, "Hey, did Heidi take a day trip to come see you?" And their response is, "Why would Heidi be with me?" He tells them, "She didn't pick up our son from school, and that's absolutely not like her." Shane knew something was wrong. Heidi would never just disappear without telling him where she was going, and she would never leave without Margot's things. He goes outside to Heidi's car. It's unlocked. Her red purse is inside. He goes through the purse and finds her wallet, cash, credit cards, and ID. Panic is setting in. If Margot doesn't get her special formula for jaundice, a syndrome called kernicterus can occur. It's a condition where very high bilirubin levels in the blood are deposited in the brain tissue, causing irreversible damage to the brain. Shane calls police to report Heidi and Margot missing at 7:31 p.m. This wasn't like Heidi. She wasn't the type of person to just leave without a word, and especially would not take off without her firstborn child. Austin police officers arrive. They start conducting a search around the apartment, contacting family members and friends of Heidi's. They also put out a reverse 911 to over 4,000 homes in the immediate area of their apartment, releasing the names and photos to media as well in hopes to locate them faster. The very next day, police bring Shane in to conduct a more in-depth interview. Usually in these types of cases, they automatically start looking at the spouse or partner. Shane gives his timeline of events, and the police, well, they're able to corroborate his story. So he's no longer the first suspect. Later that day, the police put out an emergency ping. This is where police ask cell phone providers to ping a mobile phone to find its location. The ping runs for 48 hours and sends data at 15-minute intervals. They never got a response from Heidi's phone, so it was either shut off or the battery had died. All of her records from social media were also normal. There's no signs that she was unhappy or had any plans of just running away from her life all of a sudden. December 17th, just 5 days after Heidi and Margot's disappearance, the Austin police call in the help of the FBI. The FBI, they send the Child Abduction Response Deployment Team to assist with investigating. The authorities tell friends and family members to get the story out. You never know who might have seen something or heard something. The authorities would also work to get the story in the media, and news outlets blast the case. A missing mother and a 3-week-old infant is sure to get lots of media attention. Shane does an interview with the news, and it strikes everyone as odd. Remember when Chris Watts did his interview and he swaying from left and right? He had a nervous laugh and was almost trying to hide his smirk. Chris Watts also initially reported his wife and children missing. Well, in Shane's interview, he has some of the same behavior. He's swaying left and right. He starts laughing nervously. He's smirking as he's talking about his timeline. Friends of Heidi's just felt like he's not really there, as if he was fake. He's being disingenuous. After watching his interview on social media, a lot of people started commenting and pointing their finger at Shane as well. Shane was doing press and interviews because it was something the police encouraged. He just thought he was helping to get her name and story out there. Heidi has been missing for a week. Friends of Heidi are also sharing and blasting as much information on social media. They're doing podcast interviews and just talking to everyone they can. Police are no longer investigating Shane. There's not any circumstantial or physical evidence linking him to Heidi and Margot's disappearance. So detectives start looking at the investigation at a different angle. Was Heidi taken because of the baby? Authorities, they're talking to all of Heidi's friends and families, and they start to notice a concerning pattern. They would all bring up Heidi's friend Magen. During these interviews, police also go to the hospital to talk to nurses who were working the night of Heidi's delivery. In an interview, a nurse described how Magen was present during the delivery, and it seemed she was almost possessive about the baby. Heidi's mom also stated she noticed Megan's behavior was just odd. Like Magen would put herself in between Heidi's mom and dad to get to the baby. So this leads the detectives to start looking at Magen as a suspect. One of Heidi's neighbors said that they saw Megan's car parked outside of Heidi's apartment. And they saw Heidi walk out of her apartment carrying the baby. Magen gets out of the car to greet them. They also stated Heidi got into the back seat of Megan's car and drive away. The witness doesn't initially know Magen, but they were able to give enough details about the car. So police were able to get surveillance from the complex and then link this car to Magen. So now they head up to Houston and set up surveillance outside of Magen and Chris's house. They get an aerial view and see that same car parked at the back of Megan's home. So if you look at it, their house is in front. It looks like a 2-story house, and there's a detached garage kind of towards the back right of the house. And there's like a metal gate that looks like maybe it goes to the backyard, and it's parked. So initially, I don't think you could really see it from the street. Now, during the surveillance, they see Megan's boyfriend, Chris, leave the home. They follow him to the store, Target. The police stay outside while waiting for Chris to come out of the store. Eventually, he comes out with bags of baby supplies. While Chris is putting the bags into the back of his car, police seize their opportunity and find their way in. They talk to Chris and start to explain what was going on. Heidi and her daughter are missing, and they start to ask Chris about his new baby, where he admits, yes, there's a baby at my house. My girlfriend had a baby while I was out of town, and she just brought it home. Chris claimed he had no reason to believe Magen was not pregnant. Her stomach had been growing that year. He felt it, and it even felt hard. But he never saw her undressed since they were no longer romantically or sexually involved. The police show him a picture of Margot, and Chris says, yes, that's the baby at my house. The police have to act fast. They tell Chris, you're not going home. In fact, you're going to the police station to answer more questions. But authorities determined pretty quickly he was not involved in any way in this case. Officers go to Chris and Megan's home. They storm through the doors and arrest Magen, and they also find a baby. As they're removing Magen from the home, she's kicking and screaming and saying that's her baby. However, they get a DNA test, and the results confirm that baby was in fact not Megan's. But what no one knew, not Heidi, not Shane, not anyone in Heidi's circle, was that Megan wasn't really pregnant and didn't actually give birth. Her entire pregnancy was a lie. This isn't a harmless lie. Megan's lie was calculated, it was deliberate, and it was dangerous. She was also very adamant that this was her baby, even after DNA test results were in and showed that this baby belonged to Shane and Heidi. Police were questioning her, like, okay, so if you had this baby, where did you give birth? Can we see the birth certificate? And she would claim she couldn't remember the name of the birthing center, and the only people present during the birth were doctors and nurses. While they're questioning Megan, other officers are going through their home. They're trying to find Heidi. One Texas Ranger walks by Megan's car and could smell the very distinct odor of a decaying body. The search had to be stopped until they could get a warrant to search her vehicle. Once that was obtained, they open the trunk, and inside they find a duffel bag. They unzip the bag, and they find Heidi's body. They quickly determined that Heidi had been strangled to death. The medical examiner was able to confirm this was the cause of death, and it's believed that Heidi was strangled, possibly with a dog leash and hands as well. Megan is immediately arrested and charged with 2 counts of kidnapping and 1 count of tampering with a corpse. On February 22, 2023, Megan pleads guilty to first-degree murder, and she would be sentenced to 55 years in prison. Her sentence is the result of a plea deal. Megan never publicly spoke out about her motive or why she decided to murder Heidi, leaving Heidi's family with questions and just trying to make sense of it all. However, the police have their own theory. They believe Heidi came downstairs, got into the car, and was immediately strangled before they drove off. They believe maternal desire caused her to murder Heidi. Maternal desire is where some people who have some sorts of mental illness have this burning desire to have a child, and some people will do whatever it takes to get the child. Megan wanted a baby, and for whatever reason, she could not have one. They also believe she started planning at the hospital when Heidi had her daughter. She took advantage of Heidi and murdered her so she could have a baby. However, friends and family members have their own theory. Megan had a plan in the beginning of Heidi's pregnancy to steal her baby. Maybe Megan was jealous of Heidi. She was happy and infectious and had 2 beautiful children. Why wouldn't Megan want the same life? She had an obsession with Heidi. Maybe she just wanted to be her and experience an ounce of Heidi's happiness. In my own personal opinion, this is not fact, it is just my opinion, I do believe Megan was plotting somewhat from the beginning. She was never pregnant, and what was she going to do? She knew she would have to have a baby at some point. Heidi Broussard's story is one of betrayal, obsession, and just horrifying lengths that someone can go to when jealousy and delusion take over. It's hard to imagine how this happened, how a friendship can end so tragically. But for those left behind, including Heidi's children, it is a nightmare that will never go away. While we may never fully understand what led Megan down to such a dark path, we can honor Heidi's memory by remembering her as the loving, joyful woman that she was. She was a vibrant, loving mother, fiance, and friend. Her family will never be the same. And Margot, who was just weeks old at the time, will never get to grow up knowing the woman who gave her life. Heidi and Shane's friends and family, as well as Shane, do their best to keep her memory alive and talk about who Heidi was to her children. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I'm eager to hear what you think about this case. Comment your thoughts below. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share with a friend. As always, stay safe, and I'll see you next week.